bronchodilators, we have to understand what are all the bronchodilators. Okay, the bronchodilators are the name indicates they dilate the bronchi. So the increase in the calibro of the especially bronchus and bronchial tube. Oh, so they are used where there is a suspicion of bronchial narrowing and due to the bronchial secretion. So it happens especially in the patients who are suffering from asthma. There is it is called as layman terminology as the wind tube is narrow. That's called as the bronchoconstriction. So then what happens is because of this thing, the alveolar ventilation is totally decreased. So they are the most useful in obstructive lung diseases of which asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases. And then these are the most preferred conditions. So you may ask the question why you are teaching the asthma even though asthma is not present in the cattle or the dogs. So the thing is, even though the exact asthma is not present, many similar respiratory disorders are present in case of the cattle, and you can use these drugs for the treatment of such disorders. Then the pathophysiology of the bronchoconstriction. Why the bronchoconstriction occurs in case of the human beings, the cattle, and also the dogs or the small animals. So because this is one of the important thing especially I am repeatedly telling during the COVID situation, we should understand the mechanism of the drugs which are especially acting on the respiratory system. So bronchoconstriction is also one of the what you call as the problem whenever the COVID attacks to the human being. So the nervous innervations to the smooth muscles. So the tone of bronchial muscle is controlled by the humoral factors and also autonomic nervous system. And the nervous innervations to the smooth muscle of respiratory tract are totally they are complex, but the overall balance is maintained by both para and sympathetic parasympathetic nerves. So the bronchial smooth muscles are under the control of both autonomic nervous system branches. That's the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous branches. The parasympathetic nerves provides primary innervation responsible for the baseline tone of mild bronchoconstriction that characteristic with the normal respiratory tract. So the parasympathetic nerves, they supply the innervation to the bronchial muscles for the minimum basic action to maintain the minimum basic tone of the smooth muscle. So the sympathetic system balances these effects by stimulating the dominant receptor, that's the beta adreno 2 type of the adrenoceptors, and they cause the stimulation of these agents cause the bronchodilation. A third not well characterized nervous system, the non-adrenergic and non-cholinergic system, it is existing. So the one of the agent that is the VIP, vasoactive intestinal peptide, also innervates bronchial smooth muscles and mediates the bronchodilation. So varieties of the ways are there for us to intervene pharmacologically the pathology of the bronchi. So the purpose of learning the physiology and pathology is how to combat these problems pharmacologically. That's the intervention of the difficulties using the drug with the basic mechanism of actions. So coming to the human asthma. So in case of human being, the asthma is one of the most common disorder, upper airway tract disorder. So what happens in case of the normal human beings, you can see that this is the bronchi, especially the trachea and bronchi is having the clear cut. That's the clear cut what passage is there with one layer of mucous membrane is there. The relaxed smooth muscles are seen in case of the asthmatic airway. So these are all the lung lesions may be there. And this is the asthmatic airway, which is constricted. That's the bronchoconstriction is there. The mucous membranes are thickened with embedded blood vessels here. Whereas the wall is inflamed, especially in case of the asthmatic airway during the asthma attack. So whenever the person is having severe asthma, this is the imaginary structure, how the bronchi looks. Then the air will be trapped in the alveoli also, because once it is taken out, it should come out from the alveoli. But in case of asthmatic airway, what happens is the air is getting inside, but it is not coming out. That's one thing. Whereas it is very difficult for the breathing in case of the asthma patients. So this is the cross section of the airway, how it is looking, especially in case of the normal as well as the thickened airway wall in case of asthma patient. So here you can see that the airway gets limited airflow because of the narrowing up of the this wind pipe, and then the muscles get tightened here, whereas in case of normal, they are having the particular structure with a relaxed property. Whereas the inflamed airway looks like this thing with a lot of mucus will be there, which is also making the respiration difficult. So we need to use the antitussive agent and also the expectorants, which are depending upon, especially antitussive agents are not indicated when it's a productive cough, means which produces the sputum, whereas in such conditions it is indicated. So the airway will be narrowed, then there is no free flow of the air into the alveoli through these bronchioles. So whenever there is a intense physical exercise, that's called as the irritant environment, chronic or cold air. So many of you do not like the cold air, I know, because you have got certain allergy or asthma, and you may say that, yes, the cold situation I cannot tolerate. So this is due to the environment which is irritating us due to the cold temperature. So what happens during this particular thing is, so this is the lining of the airway, and sometimes the epithelial injury occurs, especially too much cold or the chilled status, especially if the Indians suddenly go to the United States of America, especially in Canada and other countries. So the temperature will be in the minus, especially the Italy, Milano, etc. So what happens is, then there is a damage to the epithelial cells, then some of them will be turned out. Then what happens is the ventilation rate here, going to decrease, whereas the osmolarity is going to increase. So what happens whenever the cell is damaged, then lot of the inflammatory cells try to correct it, especially the neutrophils, interleukins, tumor necrosis alpha, that's interleukins like the interleukin 1 beta and interleukin 6. So all these are the inflammatory mediators, and they try to repair the cell damage, but the histamines are also released from the mast cells, and the blood vessels will be erythematous. Then what happens is, because of this thing, the mast cells release the histamine, and also the other inflammatory cells like the prostaglandin, then leukotrienes, etc. All these are released. Whereas the substance P is going to stimulate all these sections, and airway smooth muscles are being affected, then they are going to be constricted. That is the pathophysiology of the airway problem. So this you need to understand very simply, because further we are going to deal with certain drugs which are going to repair all these particular inflammatory process. So the especially the drugs which are having the bronchodilatory effect, they are acting through certain intracellular mechanisms. So the explanation of the earlier thing once again, the intracellular mechanism which transmit signal from the nervous system to the smooth muscle, and which depends upon the changes in the intracellular concentration of the cyclic AMP and also the cyclic GMP inside the airway. The cyclic AMP is decreased by alpha adrenergic stimulation and increased by beta adrenoreceptor stimulation. So the cyclic AMP is decreased by alpha adrenergic stimulation, but it is increased by the concentration of the beta 2 adrenergic stimulation. So whereas the muscarinic stimulation and also the histamine receptors which are present on the smooth muscles of the bronchiole, these cause the mobilization of the intracellular calcium, which in turn results in the contraction of the smooth muscle through a variety of the calcium mediated effects. The smooth muscle receptors are also susceptible to stimulation by variety of the chemical mediators, especially varieties of the drugs are going to stimulate different type of the receptor. It may be the muscarinic receptor or the adrenergic receptor, the histaminic receptor, the prostaglandin receptors, or also many other type of the receptors and enzymes. Then the choice of in the use of the bronchodilators will be primarily in the empirical basis, because as and when it is required, depending upon the situation, circumstances, how much quantity of the construction is there, in which condition the patient is there, like that, it depends upon the different cause, this empirical basis. So the assessment of the airway function, airway caliber, and the bronchomotor constriction is targeted when we are using the bronchodilators. So this is the intracellular mechanism. Here you can see that airway, it is having the attack of the asthma. So as already it is explained that there will be lot of release of the triggering effect, especially the pollens. So suppose a person is having asthma, and the asthma attacks will be there whenever he is allergic to the pollen grains, or they are called as the triggering mechanism of asthma. Then what happens is mucus and cell debris, then there will be edema of the bronchial circuits, then the bronchial constructions, especially it is because of this thing, the person will feel very, very discomfort, because there will be choking effect. So if you take this a betel nut, areca nut or the betel nut, and after some time you feel that somebody is putting pressure on your neck, especially on the respiratory tract. This is because the areculin hydrochloride will act on the muscarinic receptors or the nicotinic receptors which are present on the smooth muscles and try to contract, and hence you are getting the choking effect. So the what happens is, especially the hypertrophy of the muscles will get, then collagen deposition is occurring, and thickness of the basal membrane happens, especially in the asthma patients. So the intracellular mechanisms are this type, because there is a contractile agonist is there. If you use a contractile agonist which cause the constriction, especially the histamines, the serotonins, bradykinin, M1, this cholinergic and adrenergic. So they are all attached with the G stimulatory proteins. Then it is going to activate the phospholipase 3. So phospholipase 3 is going to activate inositol diphosphate to inositol triphosphate. So inositol triphosphate increases the intracellular calcium in the sarcoplasmic reticulum, because the smooth muscles do contain the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Then what happens is the calcium is extruded out, and it is going to activate the smooth muscles without, because of the contraction mechanism of the calcium. So the classification of the bronchodilator is going like this. The number one is adrenergic agonists and sympathomimetics. So here once again there are two classifications. One is non-selective beta adrenergic receptor agonists. So non-selective means they do not have very specificity to the beta 2 only, but they may also act on the other type of the beta cells, beta 2 receptor in the body. So the beta 2 type of the receptors are also present on the heart. So the common drugs or non-specific drugs used are epinephrine, then ephedrine, then isoprenaline and orsiprenolane. These are the four non-selective beta adrenergic receptor agonists that are commonly used. Whereas the selective beta 2 adrenergic receptor agonists like the clenbuterol, then also the terbutaline, then the salbutamol and salmeterol. Among these things, the terbutaline, then clenbuterol, the salbutamol is very commonly used in the cough syrups, which is containing the salbutamol, a characteristic beta 2 adrenergic agonist. Whereas the non-selective agents are also going to act on the beta 1 type of the receptors. Then the muscarinic receptor antagonists or the anticholinergic drugs are the atropine sulfate, atropine, then the atropine or congeners like glycopyrronium, then ipratropium, then also tiotropium, then the eukotropine. All these drugs are the specific, especially muscarinic receptor antagonists. Whereas the methyl xanthines, just like the, or they are also going to increase the concentration of cyclic AMP in the cells. So they are the cyclic phosphodiesterase enzyme inhibitor, like the okay. So this is the classification. Example: theophylline, aminophylline, and the another drug, that's the etamphylline. So the leukotriene.
Hello. Sir, namaste.
Hey. Then the leukotriene antagonists are the montelukast and zeferlukast. Already we have discussed it in the anti-leukotriene antagonists, especially in the drugs acting on the different, especially the prostaglandins, then the leukotriene drugs. So these are the drugs which are acting very specifically. Then coming to the first one, that is the adrenergic receptor antagonists, or also known as the sympathomimetics, or they are going to mime the sympathetic type of the receptors. So the adrenergic agonists cause the bronchodilation through the activation of the beta 2 adrenoceptors present on the respiratory tract, whereas the beta 1 receptors are also present on the respiratory tract, but their population is less. Hence, the dominant action is on the beta 2 type of the receptors. The beta receptor agonists are considered the most effective group of the bronchodilators because they act as functional antagonists of the airway constriction, regardless of the type of the stimulation. So the beta adrenergic receptors, especially agonists, so they are the one of the most effective system because they are very specific and they act on the beta 2 type of the receptor and relax the especially the smooth muscles of the lungs. So the sites where the beta 2 adrenergics are present is in the bronchioles and also the alveoli and also on the trachea. All these sites are having the beta 2 adrenergic receptors. Then the mechanism is of action is simple, as we have already understood that these drugs, especially the beta 2 adrenergic agonists, which are non-selective agents, are going to interact with the beta 2 adrenergic receptor located on several cell types in the respiratory tract, including the smooth muscles of the inflammatory cells and also the inflammatory cells. Like the beta adrenergic receptors also stimulate the secretion of varieties or enormous quantity of the airway mucus. So this will result in loss of the viscous secretion and enhanced ciliary activity. So the adrenergic agonists are regarded as the fastest acting bronchodilators when inhaled because directly these inhaled agents are going and bind with that of the beta 2 adrenoceptors, then bring the relaxation. So the varieties of the nasal sprays, then also nebulizers are present, which are containing the adrenergic receptor antagonists. So to get relieve the respiratory problem. So adrenergic drugs are the mainstay treatment of reversible airway obstruction, but should be cautiously used in hypersensitive heart patients and also who are receiving the digitalis, because there will be a problem because the beta 1 and beta 2 type of the receptors are also present on the heart. So the first one is the non-selective beta adrenoceptor agonists. So these are important component of the therapy of the acute respiratory distress, especially in case of the small animal. So the disadvantages of these drugs are they cause the effect on the heart, because in case of heart, both beta 1 and beta 2 type of the receptors are located, and these agents are going to bind with that of the both type of the receptors. So the first example is the epinephrine or adrenaline. So it acts on both alpha and beta type of the receptors, and it is a very potent bronchodilator. So it produces prompt but short-lasting the bronchodilation. Then in addition to beta 2 receptor stimulant activity, the epinephrine has considerable alpha adrenergic activity, which may cause the vasoconstriction and the systemic hypertension. So it is going to mimic the entire sympathomimetic systems of the body. So wherever the receptors are present, either it may be a beta 1 receptor or it may be a beta 2 type of the receptor. So it will do its action. So the clinical use of epinephrine is declined because due to the availability of very specific drugs, but it is one of the drug that is the life-saving drug because it is very, very potent in action. Of course, there will be a very fast relaxation of the smooth muscles of the bronchi or bronchodilation effect. So then, especially in case of the allergic reactions or the anaphylactic injection, there will be severe bronchoconstriction. So at that time, the drug of choice is the epinephrine. The another drug is the ephedrine. Ephedrine is mixed with non-catecholamines which stimulate. It's a mixed acting non-catecholamine which stimulates both alpha and beta receptors and also the central nervous system. So it is going to cross the blood-brain barrier and act on the brain and also cause the centrally axed muscle relaxation. So it causes slowly developing mild bronchodilation. See, the ephedrine is not fast as the epinephrine. So it is usually mainly used as the chronic medication for mild to moderate asthma, and also it also possesses alpha agonistic property, especially alpha 2 adrenergic receptors. So this is a inhibitory type of the receptor and possess alpha agonistic property. So this is going to cause the mucosal swelling of the bronchial smooth muscles. And also the epinephrine, it may cause systemic vasoconstriction and hypertension, then which are not desirable because it's a non-specific action. So it causes the constriction of the blood vessels so that the low blood will be flowed to the bronchioles and causes the hypertension, which is not desirable, especially. Whereas the isoprenaline or isoproterenol, both are same, isoprenaline or isoproterenol, they are the same, and they are the non-selective beta 1 and beta 2 adrenoreceptor agonist with no activity on the alpha adrenergic receptor. At least this is better because if you use the adrenaline or epinephrine, it's also going to act on the alpha 2 type of the receptor and may complicate the situation. But in emergency, it need to be given because it is fast acting. And also the sprays are available, they can also be used. So the isoprenaline has got the advantage that it can be used both parenterally and to achieve rapid effect and more, that's orally for the chronic therapy. Like other non-selective beta receptor agonists, isoprenaline may cause adverse effects as a result of beta adrenoreceptor activity. That's also adrenoreceptor beta activity. And these effects may be problematic in cats, especially suffering from the hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So it causes the non-specific actions. So the drug may also act on the heart. Then the aerosolization reduces the adverse effects of isoprenaline by increasing the beta 2 receptor specificity, but aerosol inhalation is not a convenient means to administer the drugs to animals, because in case of the human beings, the structure of the nose and the cooperation what the patient given is very high. Whereas in case of the cats and dogs, if you put a mask to the mouse, they will immediately take it out and try to auto-mutilate or they bite that particular thing. So the mask and other things are not useful, especially the gaseous inputs. So, and also the aerosol input. Totally it is a difficult task, especially in the ferocious dogs and cats. Whereas the oxyprenaline, or it's also known as metaproterenol, is a long-acting derivative of the isoprenaline. And its activity resembles to the isoprenaline, that's the beta 1 and beta 2 adrenoreceptor agonistic action, but it is somehow little selective than the beta 2 receptor with less cardiac stimulation. So this is very much required because both the lungs and heart do have similar type of the beta 2 type of the receptors. So if it is administered, the drug isoprenaline is going to bind with the isoprenaline receptors which are present on the bronchial smooth muscles and also the trachea, the heart. So because of this thing, there is a relaxation of the heart and cause low hypertension, low BP. Then coming to this second agents, that's the beta 2 specific adrenergic receptor agonists. And selective beta 2 adrenal receptor agonists act selectively on beta 2 type of the receptors, which are present on the respiratory tract, so smooth muscles, and are not generally associated with the undesirable side effects. So presently these drugs are having the very commonly used, especially in case of the asthma. The number one drug is the clenbuterol, is available in the hydrochloride salt, a direct acting sympathomimetic which selectively act on the beta 2 type of the receptors. So it is introduced in veterinary medicine for the relief of bronchospasm earlier in horses. So they also suffer from the bronchoconstriction. So it is also available in case of human patients as a decongestant and the bronchodilator. So this is very easily available over the counter also. Then clenbuterol, coming to the little property, not going into the detail, that is enough for you. That's the clenbuterol is long-acting beta 2 adrenoceptor agonist. So apart from the action of the relaxing the airways, it increases the bronchial secretions and improves the clearance of bronchial content by the ciliary movement of the bronchial mucous membrane. So the clenbuterol is approved for horses as a bronchodilator in the management of airway obstructions such as COPD or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So it's also useful in other species like the allergic respiratory disorders and respiratory infection and also the inflammation. So once the infection starts, the second one is the inflammation. And clenbuterol has also been used as a performance enhancing drugs. Actually, it is misused for that particular thing. So it is used as a doping agent sometimes also, and its ability to increase the muscle to fat body ratio, and because of this thing, the illegal users in the livestock popular to obtain the linear meats. So that's why it's having the catabolic effect, and also it is going to increase the muscle to fat and fat to body ratio, it increases. So because of this thing, sometimes it is misused as a body fattening agent, especially in case of the poultry. Then terbutaline is one of the most commonly available as the bronchodilator. So it is a synthetic sympathomimetic amine which stimulates selectively beta 2 adrenoceptors and found in the bronchi. The beta 2 adrenoceptors are more commonly present in the bronchial, the vascular and uterine smooth muscles, causing the relaxation. So this is also used as the agent, tocolytic agent. So you might have remember the terbutaline is also a tocolytic drug. It is going to relax the pregnant or gravid uterus. So similar to that of the clenbuterol, it increases orally beating of the respiratory mucosal muscles and has the that's the mucolytic action. And apart from this one, the terbutaline may have a greater cardiac stimulant effect than the clenbuterol. So it may be more pronounced, especially in case of the rats or cats. So the terbutaline is used in the adjunctive treatment of the cardiopulmonary disease, especially the tracheobronchitis and collapsing trachea, allergic bronchitis and pulmonary edema in small animals, and also in case of the large animal like the horses. So terbutaline stays very good and it's having the good performance, but the adverse effect is it's going to act on the gravid uterus and try to evacuate the fetus out. Then salbutamol, a common content of the expectorant and antitussive mixture. So albuterol, it's the next name is the albuterol. It's a the short acting selective beta 2 adrenal receptor agonist. So it possesses the bronchodilator activity but has the minimal cardiac stimulant action. So it is the cross reaction with that of the receptors of the heart is less in case, especially in case of the salbutamol. So it is used primarily in case of dogs and cats for the efforts on bronchial smooth muscle to alleviate the bronchospasm or cough. So this is the base type of the mechanism, especially these are used in case of dogs and cats. Then it could also be used in case of the horses as one of the preferred bronchiodilator drug. So its action and all other properties are very similar to that of the terbutaline. Terbutaline is available as 1 ml these ampoules, and also the tablets are there. And salmeterol is a long-acting beta-2 adrenergic receptor agonist drug, whereas the other drugs are short-acting. So it possesses an aryl alkyl group with a chain length of 11 atoms in the what you call as the atom of the amine, which makes the compound more lipophilic and more selective for the beta adrenoreceptor agonistic activity. So the salmeterol is currently prescribed for the treatment of asthma and chronic bronchitis, pulmonary disease, that's the COPD or chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder. So COPD, all these experiments are being done. Then the second one is the muscarinic receptor antagonists, not the agonists, antagonists. So the muscarinic receptor antagonists are going to block with the muscarinic 1 type of the receptor and going to relax the bronchial smooth muscles. And this is useful for the treatment of the severe bronchoconstriction. So these are less efficacious than adrenergic agonists, but can add to the response. So although the therapeutic use of the anticholinergics as bronchodilators has declined nowadays, the addition, especially of newer quaternary anticholinergics such as the ipratropium and tiotropium has renewed the interest, especially in this group of the drugs. And the route by which these agents are administered also influences the bronchodilatory effect. So the drugs can be administered as tablets and also sometimes the nebulizers. So nebulizers, the action is very, very fast, but short acting. Whereas if you administer them orally, then long acting, but the efficacy is little bit less. Then the atropine or atropine sulfate as a synthetic drug, the anti-muscarinic drug atropine has been used for many of the years for the relief of the bronchoconstriction in chronic emphysema condition, not the acute emphysema, chronic emphysema condition. Atropine reduces the muscarinic cholinergic receptor mediated the bronchoconstriction to produce the relaxation of tracheobronchial smooth muscles or the tracheobronchial tree. And it reduces the secretions in the pulmonary tract because of it's one of the most potent anti-secretory drug. So whenever the atropine is given, it causes the xerostomia or the dryness of the stomach. So not the stomach, especially dryness of entire mucous membrane, and also the salivation, the dry mouth is there, and the intestinal secretions are also going to stop. So here it is mentioned that the tachycardia, xerostomia, then CNS stimulation and alter GI or the urinary tract functions due to the non-selective action on the muscarinic receptor. Just like it is also going to block all types of the muscarinic receptors like M1, M2, M3, M4 and M5. And all these factors is routine as a bronchodilator. So the use of this atropine sulfate, it is used as an injection and also a content of bronchodilator syrup. So the bronchodilation causes, especially in case of acute dyspneic animals. So combination of the atropine with either a beta adrenoceptor agonist or a glucocorticoids usually causes better bronchodilation than the either drug, or if it is used alone. So it is more potent use of atropine sulfate with that of a adrenoceptor blocker like the bromhexine or many more drugs. The glycopyrronium is synthetic quaternary ammonium muscarinic, that's the antimuscarinic agent that can be used as the bronchodilators, especially in case of the small animals. So it is twice as potent as atropine in causing bronchodilation when it is applied as a aerosol. So it is onset of the action is lower, the glycopyrronium, when compared to the atropine, but its half-life is 4 to 6 times that's the compared to the atropine sulfate, that's within the 1 to 2 hours of atomization. So the glycopyrronium after parenteral administration, it can have the similar adverse effect on the profile of the atropine, with the exception that the CNS effect, because the CNS especially which has got the blood-brain barrier is not going to allow the glycopyrronium inside the brain, whereas the atropine passes through the blood-brain barrier also. So the dose you can note down like 0.01 to 0.02 milligram. Usually it is subcutaneous. Ipratropium, we have discussed it already. It's a synthetic quaternary ammonium antimuscarinic compound. It is used as a bronchodilator mainly in human medicine and very uncommonly used in case of the horses. So the mechanism of action of ipratropium is a non-selective muscarinic receptor blocker, maybe M1 and N2. The blockade of the muscarinic acetylcholine receptors in the smooth muscles results in the decreased synthesis of the intracellular cyclic the GMP or guanosine monophosphate. So it is postulated that reduced concentration of the cyclic GMP produces the negative effect on intracellular calcium. So this results in decreased contractibility of the smooth muscles in case of the both bronchi and also in case of the lungs. And the secretion, especially anaerobic secretion, will be present while there is a respiratory tract problem, and that will be drastically reduced. So ipratropium bromide is available as the inhalation solution, and that's also 0.02%, or total dose will be 0.5 milligram per total volume. That is the 2.5 ml nebulizer is coming with the ipratropium bromide. So the pharmacological action of this drug it is pharmacologically, this drug is better than atropine sulfate because it is having less side effect when compared to the atropine is culture. And another thing is the action starts more slowly than that of the earlier receptors, and it is usually less intense than that of the produced by the sympathomimetic amines or sympathomimetics. So in how the affected horses, the ipratropium bromide nebulization has shown to cure the bronchodilation lasting about 6 hours. So you can make the horse to be active till 6 hours after administration of the ipratropium bromide. So the pulmonary functions of the horses will be increased to a greater extent because the respiratory pathway will be cleaned, the dry and inspissated pus will be removed out of the body. Of course, any drug which is having effect will have a side effect. So this also has the same, and ipratropium may produce transient local side effects like the mouth will be dry, irritation in the trachea, cough and nervousness in few of the patients, and other systemic effects are of course rare. There is no contraindication for inhaled ipratropium apart from the hypersensitivity need to be addressed and related substances. For oral administration, the contraindications are very similar to that of the anticholinergic, that is the narrow angle glaucoma and obstructions in GI tract and UTI or urinary tract. So the drug combination, it is usually combined with the beta-2 adrenergic agonists as well as the theophylline and the other methylxanthine like ipratropium, which increase the dilating effect of the totally bronchi. Then the clinical use of this drug, as it is self-explanatory, it is used as the nebulizer in case of the COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder, COPD. It's also common in case of the human beings. So in acute bronchoconstriction, the combination of beta-2 adrenoceptor agonist and the ipratropium, it is considered as better when compared to the alone agent. It is also useful in reducing the nasal flow, especially in case of rhinorrhea. That's one of the very common thing because whenever you have some flu or other thing, then there will be rhinorrhea, continuous running nose. So this gives a lot of problem to the person who is suffering, and hence at that time the ipratropium bromide will be of great help. The nasal congestion, because many times you will get the nasal congestions like there is itching in the nose and other things, so it got irritation, so that will also be reduced. And the nebulizer containing the ipratropium bromide with 250 micrograms per liter is available in the market, and it is diluted to 75 microgram then in sterile sodium chloride for the use, especially in case of horses. So it need to be sprayed in case of the horses at a dose of the 2 to 3 micrograms at a time per kg. And tiotropium bromide or tiotropium is also known as the varieties of the drugs are available. Then the newly developed container of the ipratropium bromide that binds very tightly to the bronchial muscarinic receptors, including the and producing the long-lasting bronchodilation. So it's a long-acting drug, and unlike the ipratropium, it is not absorbed from the respiratory tract and also the GI mucosa and exhibited the high selectivity on the bronchial smooth muscle. So it is not going to act non-scientifically or the non-specifically. Tiotropium is used in the management of the COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder. So it's a very common disorder in the many percent of the patients, suppose 10%, because the pollen grains and allergies cause the obstructive disorders in case of the lung. Then the coming to the further, that is the methylxanthine, another 10 minutes. Okay, methylxanthine include the especially the caffeine, theophylline, and theobromine, and also their derivatives. So the naturally occurring alkaloids are consumed primarily as beverages, just like you are drinking coffee, tea, and coca. So whenever you are feeling sleepy or do not have a good mood, then you are going to drink a cup of tea and coffee, which contains the caffeine, theophylline, and theobromine, and it has got the CNS stimulant effectivity. And apart from this one, if you drink more and more tea, then it causes a diuretic effect also. Then it is also a myocardial stimulant and smooth muscle relaxant, especially these properties. So try to have the tea as and when possible, but not as the excessive dose is also dangerous. It causes the acidity, hyperacidity. So all the three alkaloids have been qualitatively similar actions, the caffeine, theophylline, and theobromine. But there are marked quantitative and pharmacokinetic differences are there. So in general, order of potency for the naturally occurring methylxanthine is just like the theophylline is strongest, and it is better than the caffeine when compared to the theobromine. Caffeine is having more potency, as especially which is present in the coffee. Theophylline is the one which is present in the tea. And also the methylxanthine such as the theophylline and its compounds have been extensively used as the bronchodilators, especially in case of the asthma and also the COPD, but not considered for the first line drug anymore. So whenever there is an emergency, this drug cannot be used because it takes much time to act on the bronchi. Then chemistry and SAR, structure activity relationships. So the xanthines, methylxanthines, it's also a organic heterocyclic compound which looks like this particular structure is there on your right side. That's the theophylline. It's also 1,3-dimethylxanthine, whereas the theobromine, just if you change the structure in 3,7-dimethyl and 2 methyl groups make it theobromine, and caffeine is this thing, especially 3 CH3 groups are there with the O group and the nitrogenous groups. And these natural alkaloids have slow solubility, which can be enhanced by the formation of the complexes with other compounds. Example, between theophylline and the ethylene diamine to give aminophylline, and right between caffeine and sodium benzoate. So because of the production of the aminophylline, there is bronchodilation, and substitution of the position 3 xanthine molecule augments the bronchodilator potency, whereas the 7 increases the bronchodilator effect. So the example, theophylline is more potent than caffeine as a bronchodilator when compared to the theobromine. So this is the mechanism of action in a diagrammatic representation. So PDE means phosphodiesterase enzyme is concerned. So whenever there is a bronchoconstriction is there, then the bronchial tone will be increased. Then here the the ATP is converted to cyclic AMP, and this step is inhibited by the phosphodiesterase enzyme, and that's why the intracellular cyclic AMP concentration increases to a great extent, so that the bronchodilation occurs. Whereas in the bronchodilation, whenever there is a what you call as the bronchodilatory drug, increases the bronchial tone, which is due to the acetylcholine, which is converted to the adenosine. So the bronchoconstriction will be removed by the action of these particular theophylline. And mechanism of action is the first mechanism, methylxanthines completely inhibit the cyclic phosphodiesterase enzyme, which degrade the cyclic nucleotides, especially the cyclic AMP, and intracellularly the cyclic GMP. So here you can see that ATP is converted to cyclic AMP, and with the help of the phosphodiesterase enzyme, it is converted to 5-AMP. So this metabolism will be stopped by inhibiting the phosphodiesterase enzyme by the theophylline. So the relaxant action on the smooth muscle has been attributed to the intracellularly increased cyclic AMP level. So the increased levels of the cyclic AMP activate the pKa protein kinase A and inhibit the synthesis of the leukotrienes and the TNF, which are the aggravating factors, and these suppress the release of the histamine. And bronchodilation, then cardiac stimulation, and the this thing, that's the vasodilatation, also occur when cyclic AMP level rises in the concerned cells. So intracellular cyclic AMP causes the relaxation, especially in the bronchial smooth muscles. Then methylxanthines also release catecholamines from adrenal medulla, which further elevate the levels of cyclic AMP in the cells. And another mechanism is methylxanthine cause the release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum in the bronchial muscles, especially the skeletal and cardiac muscles. So this uncoupling intracellular calcium, this increases the muscle contractile elements. So all many mechanisms are there that the methylxanthines block the adenosine receptors, especially which are the adenosine is a local mediator, especially in the cells and the CVS and other organ, causing the contraction of the smooth muscles, dilatation of the cerebral blood vessels, and suppression of the cardiac pacemaker and inhibition of the gastric secretions. So these are all the effects of the methylxanthine. So it is going to antagonize the adenosine, which produce the opposite effect. So the adenosine receptor antagonism is caused by the theophylline, and it is the most important factor, the responsible for many pharmacological effects of the methylxanthine in doses which recommend therapeutically. So the first two mechanisms are exerted only at the concentration much higher than that of the therapeutic plasma concentration. And theophylline, theobromine, and all these things are very commonly used in their natural form, and also the synthetic form as the theophylline tablets. Then especially it is having the neutral pH. It is a prototype for the methylxanthines. Then the mechanism of action of theophylline is, once again, it is explained here, because the agonist, just like the theophylline, is going to bind, especially with that of the phosphodiesterase 4 and 7, so which converts the ATP to the cyclic AMP, and this step is blocked and hence causes the bronchodilation. Apart from this one, it also going to stop the conversion of GDP to cyclic GMP. Then the inflammatory reaction will be drastically reduced. And pharmacological action is of this drug, respiratory system is most prominent effect, small airways of the respiratory tract, and produces the bronchodilation by action on the smooth muscles, and also increase the tidal volume by stimulating the respiratory center in the MO, that's the medulla oblongata. So in addition, the bronchodilatory effect, the thiopilin inhibits the mast cells and decreases the histamine release. So it is effective in conditions with the reversible airway obstruction, especially in the COPD. Then CNS also it's going to act, especially if you drink the coffee and tea, you will get little more relaxed. So the theophylline induces CNS effects, then which are less potent than the caffeine. And theophylline is more important in CNS induced adverse effect. And the both methylxanthines, especially caffeine and theophylline, produce the alertness, allay fatigue, and improve performance and increase motor activity. That's why if you drink the tea or coffee, then suddenly there will be the lightning effect or the arousal effect. So the medullary, regulatory, respiratory, and vasomotor centers are stimulated. And if you drink too much tea or coffee, then vomiting may also occur due to the gastric irritation, and also it will act on the CTZ, that's the chemoreceptor trigger zone. And cardiovascular stimulation, as it is a non-specific drug, it stimulates the heart and increase the force of the myocardial contraction. So this need to be taken care. So the theophylline increases the heart rate by direct action because the cyclic AMP or cyclic phosphodiesterase enzyme is inhibited, and a lot of cyclic AMP will be there inside this cell. So it is, if it is in the higher dose, it is used as the toxic agent. And kidneys also, it has got some effect, and also the skeletal muscles. Of course, if you consume the tea and coffee, it is well absorbed orally. Then also the aminophylline, or it's also same, the theophylline and ethylene diamide. So all the actions are very similar to that of the theophylline is concerned, and some of the, it's also available as aminophylline injection or derifylline, the trade name, and in emergencies like anaphylactic shock, it is used. Then etamphylline is also the derivative of the theophylline. It is used in both human and veterinary medicine. So usually etamphylline is available as sustained release tablets and the theophylline. So this is about the leukotriene antagonists are also used as montelukast and zefarlukast, and you have seen in the earlier classes, of course, both montelukast and zefarlukast. So they are used. So with this, we are going to complete this particular thing. Okay.